We begin the Gemara today on Daf Yud Beis Amud Aleph, the first in the beginning of the line. Amar Shmuel said. So here, according to Rashi, this Gemara is talking about a guy that's doing a malacha for you on Shabbos. Mekabele kibaylis, a guy that accepts a job for you. As we learned yesterday, Mekabele kibaylis means a guy that's being paid not by hour or by the day or by the week, but he's being paid for a job. Let's say he's building a house for you or he's working in a field for you. So he's doing this job for you. So b'toich tchum, if he's doing this work within the tchum of the city, so then aser. He's not allowed to work for you on Shabbos. Because even though he's working on his own time, I didn't tell him to work on Shabbos, so technically it should be allowed. Because he's choosing to do it on Shabbos, that's his own choice. But nevertheless, because it's inside the tchum and everybody sees that he's doing this and they know he's working a job that you hired him for, so they think that you told him to do it on Shabbos. Chutz l'tchum, but if it's outside of the tchum, so then people won't see what he's doing for you, mutter. So then it's allowed. That's Rashi's pshat in the Gemara. Rashi brings that you have a Gemara in Shabbos that actually says that you're even allowed to do it within the tchum. There the Gemara says you can give your laundry to a guy to do the laundry, and you're not telling him to do it specifically on Shabbos. He has a job to do the laundry for you. He's doing a dry cleaning job for you. And you're allowed to give it to him even within the tchum, Rashi says. So Rashi answers that over there we're talking about laundry where people can't see that there's laundry that belongs to a yid. People don't recognize that this is something that is, says they're going to have a question, why is this guy doing a job for a yid? But if a guy, let's say, is building a house for you, and it's in the city, and everybody knows who this house is, who this house belongs to, and he's doing it within the tchum, over there, because there's a hakara, everybody knows it belongs to the yid, there the Gemara is making the distinction if it's within the tchum or outside the tchum. That's Rashi's pshat.
If he's washing in his house, the guy's house.
What?
If he's washing in his guy's house, nobody knows the guy.
Yeah, that's what we're talking about, exactly. When the guy is, yeah. There's other Rishayim that have different pshatim in this Gemara. Taisus over here says that maybe this Gemara is b'chlal not talking about Shabbos, it's talking about the union of Avelus, that when a person is an oval and a guy is doing a job for you, he should only do it outside the tchum, not within the tchum. There are other pshatim of the Rishayim. There's a lot of different pshatim of the Rishayim in this Gemara. It's a very fundamental piece of Gemara when you get to the halachas of Amir La'akum, of having a guy do work for you on Shabbos and so on. Rav Papa added another limitation to this. Even when you have a guy doing work for you outside of the tchum, so if it's out of the tchum of this city, and there's no other city that it's close to over there, and therefore there are no Yidden from another city that are going to come and see, oh, look at this house of this Yid is being built on Shabbos. But if out of the tchum of your city, there's another city that it is close to over there, so then Asr. It's still going to be Asr, because the people of the other city see this work being done. A third limitation the Gemara says, Amarav Misharshia, and even if there's no city that's close to that place outside of the tchum, it also was not said that this would be allowed for the guy to do it for you. On a Shabbos or on a Yantif. People can't go there out of the tchum on Shabbos or Yantif, or it's not common to go, even if someone makes a eid of tchumim, but it's not common for people to go there. But on Chol HaMoed, when this work is not allowed to be done, the shchichi, inshi, the azli, the asal lahasam, and people are able and are common to be able to go there to that place, so then asar. You can't have a guy do this work for you, even though you took it b'kablanas. He's doing the work on his own time frame, and he decided to do it in this time. So technically, it should be allowed. But because Yidden can go there and see it being done, so therefore, it's not allowed to be done on Chol HaMoed. In a way, it comes out interesting, right? Yeah, it comes out more severe than Shabbos itself. The Gemara brings an incident about this. Mazutre bereder Rav Nachman banu le'apadne. Mazutre, the son of Rav Nachman, they built him a mansion. Mekable kibaylis. He had goyim that were hired for this job to build it. Chutz l'tchum, and it was outside of the tchum, so they're allowed to work on Shabbos and Yantif. So Ikla Rav Safra and Rav Huna Bar Chinana, Rav Safra and Rav Huna Bar Chinana came to visit him. They did not want to enter into this mansion that was built for him. I guess they knew that it was also worked on Shabbos. They didn't want to go in there. Others say that that he himself, when he found out that the workers that he hired were working even on Shabbos, he also didn't want to enter into it. So the Gemara says, why not? Va'ama Shmuel mekable kibayles. If a guy that has this job is working for you, b'toich tchum. If it's within the tchum, then aser. But chutz l'tchum mutter. But if it's out of the tchum, it's allowed. So over here it was out of the tchum. So why did they now want to enter into this mansion? And says the Gemara, Adam choshev shani. A person of stature that is different. You should be careful, even with such a kind of thing, not to come to do something inside the tchum, not to come to an isser, even out of the tchum, even though it's allowed, is different. You shouldn't have done so.
What does it mean, Adam Choshev Shani? What does that mean?
Over here, it's different pshatim. It's not the same as in the Gemara before. Over here, Adam Choshev Shani means because you're a person of stature, so therefore you should be more machmer. Even though al pi halacha it's mutter, but nevertheless, lefnim mishuras adin, not to come to do it in the oifen of isser, you should even be machmer in this case. Could be, but over here, I think over here Rashi, there's a Rashi Ksav Yad, which is printed in the end of the Masechta. That's what Rashi says, that it means that Adam Choshev should be more machmer. Another Pshat Gemara says, Yekadamri siyua saye betivne ba'adayu. That he assisted them, he also gave them teven, he gave them the straw needed for the materials of the building for the day that they worked, and even on Shabbos. So therefore, because he assisted them, so therefore they ended up using this material that he gave them on Shabbos, so he didn't want to go into it. Sagt the Gemara, Rav Chama, Shara Luhu, Rav Chama allowed la vungeri. So these are waiters, or they prepare the tables, the Bei Reish Galusa. At the house of the Reish Galusa, as you see, Rashi says regarding Avungeri, what are they? Mesadrei shulchanes. They prepare the tables. So he allowed those people to do their work, lemevad lehu avidete, to do work b'chol hamayid, on cholamayid. So Rashi explains what kind of a work are we talking about. Of course, you can prepare the tables, but let's say the legs of one of the table broke. So he allowed them to fix the tables on cholamayid. Why? Omar, he said, kivin da'agar loika shakli. They're not getting paid for the work they're doing. They're just getting, what are they getting? The meals that they can eat over there, that they're saving themselves money, that they don't have to go and buy themselves food. That's their pay, but they're not really being paid for their work. So therefore, they can do this work, they're not really being hired by us and being paid by us, v'les lamba. And it doesn't matter that they do this work and they are fixing the tables on cholamayit. Ton Rabbanan, and Abraisa we learned, Mekablin, Kibaylis, B'mayid, you're allowed to hire Goyim on Cholamayid, La'asaisa, La'achar Mayid. So you're hiring them for a job. Again, you're not hiring them for a specific time frame of when they're going to work, but you're hiring them to accept a job. And they're going to begin the job after Cholamayid. U'B'mayid Aser. But to hire them and to begin this job on Cholamayid is not allowed. Klalei Shel Davar. The rule here is, Kol Shehu Aisa, anything that you're allowed to do, Aymal Nachri V'Aisa. You're allowed to tell a guy that he could start doing this job as well on Cholamayid. V'chol she'ein Aisa, if you yourself are not allowed to do this job, this is a malacha that a yid is too much of a tirche, or it's not a davar of it, whatever it is, that you're not allowed to do this on Cholamayid, Ein Aymal Nachri V'Aisa. You're not allowed to have a guy do it for you on Cholamayid. Just like on Shabbos, there's a concept of Amir al-Nachri that's not allowed. The same on Cholamayid. You can hire him though for a job for after Cholamayid, but not for Cholamayid itself. Tanya Yidach, and another brayso we learned, Mekablin ki beilis b'mayid laseisa la'achar hamayid. You could hire a guy for a job to do it after Cholamayid. Ubulvad shelo yimdoi. As long as when you talk to him and you hire him for this job, you should not go and measure it. V'shelo yishkol, you don't weigh. V'shalayimna, you don't count. Like when you hire a guy during the weekday, that you measure and you show him exactly specifically what should be done. You're going to show him specifically after Cholamayid. Tan Rabbanan. So okay, this is sort of the conclusion of this halachis b'negei to hiring a guy and having a guy do a job for you on Shabbos or Yantif on Cholamayid. The Gemara comes back now to other halachis of Cholamayid. So we learned Nabraise ein marbiin beheime b'chol Shamayid.
Shabbos we didn't have this.
Again?
In Shabbos we didn't have all the...
We had some of this in Shabbos, but here there's certain chidushim in this Gemara that you don't have in Masechta Shabbos. That's why this is a very fundamental Gemara. B'negei Tamir al-Nachri. So Tan Rabbanan, ein marbiin beheime b'chol Shamayid. You're not allowed to breed animals in Cholamayid. This is also work that you're doing in Cholamayid, which is not a davara of it, and it's extra tirche that you're not allowed in Cholamayid. Kayetze by similar halacha, ein marbiin b'bechayr. You have a b'chayr, and the halacha about a b'chayr is, Rashi brings the pasuk, it says, Lo save b'b'chayr sheirecha. You're not allowed to do work with a b'chayr. It has the kedusha in it. And the same v'loy b'psulei hamukdashin. If you had kachim that became puzzle, and because of this it was redeemed from hektish, so you're allowed to eat it, you're allowed to use it for yourself, but you're not allowed to do work with it. You're not allowed to have it plow in your field, and you're also not allowed to breed these animals, whether it's a b'chayr or psulei hamikdashin, it's considered to be doing work with these animals. It's not allowed. Tanya Idach, and another brayse we learned, you're not allowed to breed animals in Chol HaMoed. Rabbi Yehuda but Rabbi Yehuda says there's a case where it could be a davara ovid, and then it would be allowed. Chamoira shetova, if you have a female that is looking for a male to mate with, and now this is a place where, or a time where it's going to be a davara ovid, if you're not going to bring them together, marbiyan aleh zachar. So you're allowed to mate these animals. B'shvil shalei titztanen, it shouldn't cool off, and you're going to lose this opportunity that it should give birth. But all the other animals, you're not allowed to mate them together, to breed them, because this is work that's not a davar of it. But you can bring the female animals together in a barn, in a place where there's male animals there, and then they'll mate themselves. Another halacha b'negeiah to animals on Chol HaMoed. You're not allowed to have animals, bring them into your field, and then close the doors, the gates, and you'll have those animals walk around in the field, and then they're going to relieve themselves there, and this will create fertilizer for your field. So medairim means you create your field like a barn for them, and it will give you fertilizer. Loi b'shabbasis, v'loi b'yamim tovim. You're not allowed to do this, not on Shabbos or on Yontif, and v'loi b'chol HaMoed, and not on Chol HaMoed either. V'im bo'o me'alein, if these animals come into your field on their own, so then mutter, it's allowed to have them there, to keep them there, that they're going to fertilize your field. But ve'im misayin noisam, you're not allowed to assist them to come here. Ve'im moisrim lahem shomer, so if you have a person that has animals that he's going around with, you can't give him over a shomer, l'nayer es tzainam, to lead his animals into your field, to come, to provide for you fertilizer. Hoya schir Shabbos, schir chodesh, if you had someone that was hired to bring his animals into your field in order to provide for you fertilizer. He was hired for a week. That's what schir Shabbos means. He wasn't hired for any particular day, but he was hired for the whole week. Or schir chodesh, he was hired for the month, that over the period of the month, his animals come to your field to provide fertilizer. Or schir shana, he's hired for the whole year. Or schir shavua, he's hired for 7 years. So then, in such a case, Messiah Noisan, you are allowed to provide for them assistance to be able to come into your field on Shabbos. And you also can give over a shomer for this person that you hired him to be able to guide him to your field to come and bring his animals into your field. Because he's not hired specifically for Shabbos itself, this is allowed.
What's the difference between this and to build a house?
To?
The first thing we learned, to build a house.
Where he's doing over there, when you build a house, it's mamish malacha that you're doing, right? Over there, you push it mamish doing a malacha dairaisa. Over here, you're not doing any malacha dairaisa. There's a certain gain that you have from this, that he's bringing his animals over here. That's the difference. I'm not 100% sure. Rabbi says, and according to some pshatim, Rabbi's going back to the beginning of to the first case of the braisa, where you have the animals that are coming in on their own. So b'Shabbos b'toiva. So on Shabbos, you're allowed, when you see someone that's coming in on his own, you're allowed to show him favor. You're allowed to show him that, what you're doing for me, I appreciate it, and you show him that it's a toiva for you, that he's coming into your field. B'Yontif, if someone comes in on his own, passing through your field on Yontif, you're even allowed to give him some food to eat and drink. So not only are you showing him that you appreciate what he's doing, but you're even feeding him. So it'll cause him to come in. And b'Moed, at Chol HaMoed, if somebody came in on his own, b'schar, you're even allowed to then go and pay him for coming here. You didn't ask him to come in l'chatchila, but once he came in, you are allowed to pay him for the fact that he came into your field with his animals to provide fertilizer. Rav Yosef said, Hilchase keRebbi. The halacha is like what Rebbe just said there. Zakt Heilige Mishnah, this is a continuation of the previous Mishnah where it spoke about the oil. When you have the olives that are ready to be pressed, so there was machlekes, are you allowed to go and put them into the press and do the job fully? That's what Rabbi Yossi said, and Rabbi Yehuda said, no, you could only begin pressing the oil, but you can't finish it off. So similar, you have wine that came out from the wine press, and it's being stored in a boir, in this pit that's right in front of the wine press. And the person became an oval. Or it was before Yontif, and then an einus happened, and you couldn't empty it out into a barrel. Or the workers that he hired to do this job misled him, and the workers didn't show up. So you have the same machlokes as before. Rabbi Yosi says you can empty out all the wine from the pit into a barrel, and you can close off the barrel properly, the way you would usually do it during the week. Rabbi Yehuda says it can't be done the same way like you do it during the week. What you can do is you could empty out into a barrel, and then you don't close off, you don't seal the barrel properly, but you can put boards of wood over the barrel in order for it to not become sour, not to become vinegar. But to finish off the work the way you would usually during the weekday, you're not allowed in Chol HaMoed. This is the concept of Rabbi Yehuda's opinion, that even for a davar ha'ovid, you still have to make a shinoi in the work that you're doing in Chol HaMoed. Says the Gemara, utzriche. We need the machlokes in this case regarding the wine, and we also need the same machlokes that we said before regarding the oil. If it would have said the earlier case, over there Rabbi Yosi said that you're allowed to do the malacha fully without any shinoi, mishum de mishcha nafish pseida. Because by oil, the loss, the value of the oil, and therefore the loss, if it's not going to be finished off properly, is a much bigger loss. Over there, you're allowed to do it without a shinoi. But by wine, where the loss is not as great, maybe he would agree to Rabbi Yehuda that you can do the work in Chol HaMoed, but not fully, with a shinoi. And the same is also in the reverse. If I would say only this case about the wine, so I would say by he come Rabbi Yehuda. Only here Rabbi Yehuda said you have to make a shinoi in this work because it's not such a big loss. But before by the oil, maybe over there he agrees to Rabbi Yosi because the oil is a much bigger loss. So therefore it says both cases regarding the oil and the wine that the machlokes is in both cases. Amar Rav Yitzchak bar Abba man Tana shinui b'moyed b'davar ha'ovid. Who is the Tana that says that even if you have something where there could be a loss and a Chol HaMoed it's allowed, but still you need to do a shinui? The like Rabbi Yosi. This is not Rabbi Yosi, which says you can do it in the normal way. Amar Rav Yosef halacha k'Rabbi Yosi. Rav Yosef said we paskin like Rabbi Yosi, it can be done without a shinui. The question was asked from Rav Nachman by Yitzchak, are you allowed to seal a barrel of beer on Chol HaMoed? In other words, to do it without a shinoi in the normal way that you would do it on the week. Amalahu, so he answered, Sinai Omar, Sinai said, who's Sinai? Sinai is Rav Yosef. Rav Yosef was proficient in all halachas, so he was called Sinai. And he said, halacha Rabbi Yosi, the halacha is like Rabbi Yosi, and therefore it's allowed. So the Gemara says, not necessarily could you compare this case of the barrel of beer to what Rabbi Yosi was speaking about. Rabbi Yosi was speaking about wine, which wine is more expensive. It's something that can get ruined if you don't properly seal it. But b'shichra miyama, regarding beer, did he say this? Only by wine, what's the reason he says that it's allowed? Because there's a loss in this if you don't seal it properly. So the Gemara says, Shichr is pepseda. So the same thing is also by beer, there's also a loss if you're not going to seal it properly. Because Abaye said, Omra li aim. My mother told me, this is the woman that raised him, he called her as his mother. Bar shit savi v'shia, if you have a barrel that has the measure of 6 sa'ah in it of beer, but it's properly sealed, mi bar tamni v'loy shoy. That's better than having a barrel that has 8 sa'ah in it of beer, more beer, but it's not properly sealed. So the one that's from 6 sa'ah and it's properly sealed is better. So you see that when it comes to beer, it's very important that it should be properly sealed. So therefore, this could be done even on Chol HaMoed, like Rabbi Yosi's opinion. Amarav Chama Ba'Guria, Amarav halachas Moed. The halachas of Chol HaMoed are very difficult halachas because halachas kutim, it's like the halachas of kutim ba'halacha. What's the halachas of kutim? So kutim were these geirim in the time of the first Beis HaMikdash that kept certain halachas and certain halachas they did not keep. And there was no logic behind it. Certain halachas we knew they do, and certain halachas we knew they don't do. And you can't make any comparisons and say that because they follow this halacha, they probably follow another halacha. They decided that certain things they did, certain things they did not do. It's the same thing over here regarding the halachas of Chol HaMoed. When you see a certain halach in Chol HaMoed that one thing is mutter, you can't start making a comparison. Based on this, probably something else is also mutter. It's halachas that you can't compare to one another. It's very difficult halachas. The Gemara explains, L'mai hilchasa, what relevance is there from this that we're saying here? Amar Rav Daniel Bar Katina, Loimar, this is to tell you, Shehein akurais, that these halachas are akurais. Akurais means it's like a barren woman that gives no birth. It's the same thing with these halachas. When you have one halacha, don't use this halacha to say, this is a foundation to say that from here I could learn out to something else that it would also be mutter. No, each halacha has to be looked at for itself. Ve'ein lemeidai zumizu. You can't learn out one from another. And the Gemara brings an example for this. Dama Shmuel, because Shmuel said, Zayvsin kuzisa, you could seal closed a jug, but ve'ein zayvsin chavisa. You can't seal a bigger barrel. That's what Shmuel said, even though they seem to be very similar, but nevertheless we don't compare the two. Rav Dimi of Nerdah said the exact opposite. Zayvsin chavita, you can seal closed a large barrel, ve'ein zayvsin kuzisa, and you can't seal a small jug. So the Gemara now explains what's the difference between them. Why did each one say the opposite? Mar chayesh lepseider. So the one that says that you could seal closed a big barrel is because he's more concerned about the monetary loss here. So a bigger barrel, there could be more of a loss if you don't seal it closed. Mar chayesh letirche. And the other opinion is his chash is for the tirche. A bigger barrel, it's more work, more strenuous work to seal it closed, and therefore he doesn't allow that to be done in Chol HaMoed. A small jug, which is easier to seal it, that he allows to seal in Chol HaMoed. So we see that you have two halachas that are very similar to each other, but you can't compare them. Amar Abaye said another thing in Aktinon. We also say that halachas Moed ka halachas Shabbos. There's a certain similarity of the halachas of Chol HaMoed to the halachas of Shabbos. Yashman, potter avaloser. There are certain things in Chol HaMoed that are not allowed to be done, but you'd be potter if you do it. Like this case we just said, that you're not allowed to seal the barrels, you're not allowed to do it in Chol HaMoed, but if you did it, you're potter. And v'yashban mutter lachatchila. And there are some cases that you're allowed to seal it, you're allowed to do it lachatchila. Similar to Shabbos, where you find this concept of potter avaloser. The Gemara goes on to a different scenario, b'negei to Chol HaMoed. Rav Huna chatzadu le chatzade b'moyeda. He had people hired to harvest his field in Chol HaMoed. So they had this done for him on Chol HaMoed. So the Gemara asks him this: Eisve Rabbi bar Rav Huna. So Rabbi bar Rav Huna asked Rav Huna. So it says in the Braise, Toichnen kemach b'moed l'tzorech hamoed. You're allowed to grind flour for Chol HaMoed. V'shaloi l'tzorech hamoed, and even again, v'shaloi l'tzorech hamoed. If you're grinding flour not for the purpose of eating a Chol HaMoed, also it's not allowed. Davar she'avod b'moed mutter. If you have something that there'll be a loss, so in Chol HaMoed it's allowed. La seisai mutter la seisai b'mayed, that is, you're allowed to do it in Chol HaMoed. Davar she'eina avid b'mayed, if it's something that it's not a law, so then usher, it's not allowed. Then the Braise concludes and says, when is all of this said, all these distinctions here, betlushin, that you're allowed to do the grinding, so this is something that's detached from the ground, or a davara of it, it's detached from the ground. Plushim and akarka, detached from the ground. If it's something which is attached to the ground, which is harvesting, even if it's all going to be a loss, if you're not going to do this in Chol HaMoed, it's not allowed. But then the Braise concludes, if, however, you don't have what to eat, and that's why you wanted to do this work with what's attached to the ground, so then kaitzer, you're allowed to harvest, uma'amer, you can bundle it, v'dosh, you can thresh, v'zayre, winnowing, bayre, you could select from the good from the bad, v'teichen, and grind it, you need to eat, so then this is all allowed. However, when you're threshing, you should not use cows for this, you have to do it without the cows. So what do you see here in this Braise? You're not allowed to harvest in Chol HaMoed. So how did Rav Huna have workers harvest this field in Chol HaMoed? Amalei, so Rav Huna answered him, Yechidahi, this Braise you just quoted me is the opinion of one Tana, v'lei sfira lan kvasei. We don't hold like him. And he brings the source of who this Tana is. The Tanya we learned in the Braise, Klal, Amar Rav Shimon Galil, Mishum Rav Yosi. He said in the name of Rav Yosi, and this is this one Tana, Dovarat Tolish Men HaKarka. If you have something that's attached from the ground, Afil Miktsasei Avad, even if in part of this, it's going to be a loss, mutter. You're allowed to do this work in Chol HaMoed. But when you're dealing with something which is attached to the ground, Afil Kuloi Avad. Even if it's all going to be lost, if you're not going to harvest it now in Chol HaMoed, asr. It's not allowed. So this is all Rabbi Yosi's opinion, but we don't paskin like Rabbi Yosi in this. Fragt the Gemara, Vi Rabbi Yosi, if this Braisa is Rabbi Yosi, Yadosh Nami Bepares. So you should be allowed to do the threshing even with cows. Why? Because Ha'omer Rabbi Yitzchak bar Abba, Man Tana Shinim B'Moed B'Davara Ovid. Who's the one that says that when it comes to a situation where there could be a loss, you still have to make a shinui? The like Rabbi Yosi. This is not Rabbi Yosi's opinion. So according to Rabbi Yosi, you can do the threshing in a normal way. So why does the Braisa say that you can't do it with the cows the way it's normally done? Amalach, so he'll answer you and say, Hochanami, over here as well, Kivin, the Chol, Yaime, even on a irregular day, Lav Bepares Daishi, they don't do the threshing with cows. So in the Nami Lav Shinuyhu. The fact that you're doing it now without cows is not considered to be a shinui from the way you usually do it. So therefore, this is not a shinui. And over here, what Rabbi Yosi is saying is that you should not do it with the cows. Rashi says if you do it with cows, so this is something that makes more publicity and people see the work that you're doing. So it's not a shinui, but this level of publicity, Rabbi Yosi said, should not be done on Chol HaMoed. Tan Rabbanan and Abraisa we learned regarding this halachis of preparing the food. You're allowed to grind flour for what you need in Chol HaMoed, but if you don't need it to Chol HaMoed, it's not allowed. If you ground flour and you had leftovers, so then it's allowed. You could eat it, you can use it even later. You're allowed to chop wood for Chol HaMoed if it's l'tzarech hamayid, what you need for Chol HaMoed. But to chop wood for what you do not need for Chol HaMoed also, that's not allowed. If you chopped wood and there was leftovers, you're allowed to use it. Another halacha is similar. You're allowed to make beer in Chol HaMoed, l'tzarech hamayid, for what you want to drink in Chol HaMoed. One second, no, I'm not holding there yet. But if it's not for the purpose of Chol HaMoed, then aser. Then it's not allowed. If the person made beer and he had leftovers, so then it's allowed. Regarding all these cases, the person shouldn't prepare extra and he's making a trick. He's making believe as if he needs it for Chol HaMoed, and then he says, I don't need it, and he uses it later after Chol HaMoed. No. Harama? I mean, all these things we're talking about, if you are mamish malachis. I mean, on Shabbos for sure it's not allowed. All these things are allowed in Chol HaMoed for,
Shabbos to hail.
To what?
Shabbos to hail.
To what again?
Hail.
Hoyel, there's a concept of hoyel,
right.
but it's not hadrama. It's a different kind. There's a concept of, okay, it's not the same minyan. Okay, Lamazen. So the Gemara asks on this, what does it say over here? Shelo yara. You're not allowed to play a trick and do extra. I'll ask you from a different Braisa. What does it say there? Matilin sheichar b'mayed l'tzarech hamayed. You're allowed to prepare beer on Chol HaMoed for the purpose of Chol HaMoed. V'shalei l'tzarech hamayed aser, and not for the purpose of Chol HaMoed. It's not allowed. Echad sheichat tmarim, whether beer you're making from dates. V'echad sheichat sa'irim, whether you're making beer from barley. V'afal pisha yesh lo yashan. Then the Braisa says, even if you already have older beer available for you, marim v'shaise min hachadash. You can do a trick and say, I want fresh beer. Even though really you're okay drinking the older beer, but you could do arama and make believe as if you need it for the new beer, and you could do it this in Chol HaMoed. So the Gemara answers, you're right, Tanoi, this is a machlekes Tanoim. The Tanya, we learned in the Braisa clearly, this machlekes, ein marimim bekach. The Tanakama says you can't do arama, you can't make a trick to do extra on Chol HaMoed. Rabbi Yehuda says marimin. You are allowed to make extra, and then you can use it for after Chol HaMoed. Going back to the similar.
It's talking about Chol HaMoed?
Yeah. It's all talking about Chol HaMoed.
Isn't fresh better than not fresh?
Lav dafka. That's what it's saying. Even if he has yashan, and he's gonna eat the yashan, gonna drink the yashan, but nevertheless, you can make the new beer. So the Gemara now brings back another story about harvesting a field. Rav chatzadeh lechatzadeh b'chol demayed. So he also had people who were harvesting his field on Chol HaMoed. Shama Shmuel heard about this ikbit, and it bothered him. Why did Rav allow his field to be harvested on Chol HaMoed? So the Gemara asks, based on what we learned before, why was Shmuel bothered by this? Does Shmuel hold like that single opinion, like Rabbi Yosi in the Braisa that we had before, and we don't paskin like Rabbi Yosi? So the Gemara says, Loi, that's not, no. Chatzadeh the chiti have. This was a case where he was harvesting a field, a grain of wheat, where there's no loss if you're going to leave it until after Chol HaMoed. So therefore he was bothered by the fact that Rav is doing work on Chol HaMoed where there's no loss. There's no reason to do it now. So the Gemara says, now Rav, my time of Adachi, so why did Rav do this? So the Gemara answers, because Rav did not have what to eat. He needed this wheat for the Suda, for eating. So for the Gemara, so Shmuel's, what's with Shmuel? Why was Shmuel bothered by this? So either Shmuel leisamua kaimei, the story, when Shmuel heard about this, they didn't tell him the full story. They didn't tell him that Rav Pashut needed the food. So therefore he was bothered by this. Inami, or the Gemara says, Adam choshev shani. A person on the level of Rav, even though it's allowed when you need it for food, nevertheless, a person on his level should be machmir, and even in such a case, should not harvest the field on Chol HaMoed. Rabbi Yehuda Nesiya, so here the Gemara brings another story not related to Chol HaMoed, also to show how Adam Choshev has to be careful with what he does. So Rabbi Yehuda Nesiya nafak b'chumrese de madusha. He went out on Shabbos with a kind of a ring. This is a metal ring which has a signet in it that's made from some wooden material. So he went out with this on Shabbos into his courtyard. It's one thing he did. Now, there's the halachas in Masechta Shabbos where you learn about all those halachas where you're not allowed to walk out with jewelry on Shabbos because you may take it off and show it to somebody. And in some cases, even going out with it into your courtyard is not allowed because you may come to walk out to the Rishus HaRabim. This is what this is based on. Another thing he did was, Ve'ishti maya, he drank water, the achem kfeila arma, which a guy boiled the water for him. Shama Rabami heard about this, ikbit, and it bothered him that he did these things. Rav Yosef said, my time ikbit, why was he bothered by this? If he was bothered by the fact that he's going out with this type of ring into his courtyard on Shabbos, but what's the problem? Hatani, we learned in the Braisa, hashirin, which is a brooch, hanizamim, a nose ring, a tabois, and rings. It's like any other vessel that you're allowed to take out into your courtyard on Shabbos, in a Rishus HaYachid. So that's not an issue. So why was he bothered by that? Is he bothered by the fact that a guy is boiling water for you? What's the problem? The rule by Bishul Akim is anything that you could eat or drink raw without it being cooked or boiled, there's no issue of a guy cooking it for you. So, this is not on Shabbos. This is Bichlal, Bishul Akim. Bishul Akim is not an issue with something that could be eaten raw. So why was he bothered by the fact that Rabbi Yehuda Nesiya drank water that a guy boiled for him? So the Gemara answers again the same point we said before. Adam choshev shani, a person that's on a higher level of stature, so he has to be more machmir, and therefore he was expecting of him a higher standard. A person can cut a palm tree on Chol HaMoed, even if all he needs is the little pieces of sawdust that falls from it. That's the only thing he needs, but nevertheless you can cut the entire tree for that little sawdust that you need. However, Abaye cursed somebody that would do this, that was cutting a tree on Chol HaMoed for this purpose. So the Gemara now brings an incident that happened. Ravashi Havale Ibe B'Shlanya. He had this forest that he owned in this place Shlanya. And he went to cut trees on Chol HaMoed according to the halacha that Rav said that it's allowed. Amalei Rav Shila Mishalanya. So Rav Shila from that place said to Ravashi, my daitech, what's your opinion? Why are you doing this in Chol HaMoed? Based on what Rav said, the Ka'amar of Chanan al Rav, that you're allowed to cut trees on Chol HaMoed, even if you don't need only the sawdust of it. But he said to him, but Allah Abaye. Abaye cursed someone that does this. In other words, Abaye held that B'Payil, we don't paskin like this and you shouldn't do so. Amalei, so Ravashi answered, Loi Shmieli, I didn't hear what Abaye said. Kalaimer, in other words, what he meant to say is, Loi Svirili, I disagree with Abaye that this is not allowed. But then what happened? Ishtamit Narge, the axe he was holding slipped out of his hand, and it almost cut off his thigh. So Shafke, when he saw that happen to him, he understood that this is because he did something against Abaye, so he left the work and he came back after Chol HaMoed. Rav Yehuda Shara, Rav Yehuda allowed lemekre kisne. Rav Yehuda allowed to uproot flax on Chol HaMoed, or lemikdal kshuse, and also to uproot hops on Chol HaMoed, and lemekre shumshimi, and to uproot also sesame plants on Chol HaMoed. So the Gemara explains why all of this is allowed in Chol HaMoed. Amalei Abaye Rav Yosef. What's the reason that these are things that are these things that are needed for Chol HaMoed? Why is this? What's the need in this for Chol HaMoed? So he says, Bishloi mikisne. When you take flax, so what's the use of this? Chazi lachafifa. This could be used to cover food with it. It's used as a kind of a covering. Kshuse, these hops that you are uprooting, chazi l'shichra. It could be used to make beer with it. Elashum shemi. uprooting sesame plants. Lamai chazi. What is this fit for on Chol Hamoed? Why is it allowed? So he answered him, chazi lenazye. It's fit for the seeds, the isbuhu that you have in these sesame plants, the sesame seeds. So Rashi says you could be used to make sesame seed oil. Rabbi Yanai havaleahu pardeise. Rabbi Yanai had an orchard. The matazimne b'chol Hamoed. And the time when it came to that it was ripe, that he had to take off the fruits. When did it come? It happened to be on Chol Hamoed. So katvei. So he took off the fruits. He cut the fruits on Chol Hamoed. Shana, next year, people saw what Rabbi Yanai did. So next year, shahuya kula alma lepardesayo lechol Hamoed. So everybody went and left the work to take out the fruits of the tree for Chol Hamoed. They said, look, it's allowed. You can leave it until Chol Hamoed. They didn't know that the only reason Rabbi Yanai did it was only because it happened to be that it became ripe in Chol Hamoed. So when Rabbi Yanai saw this, afkere Rabbi Yanai lepardeisei ahushata. So because through him came such a kind of a takala that people went and then left their work for Chol Hamoed, so he was mafker his entire orchard that year. Okay, we'll stop over there.